Hi guys, in this video I have a very quick look at the different parts of a circle. So these are very easy marks in the exam if you can remember them. Most of the time it is just a matching up activity, so definitely want to be hitting those marks because all it is just learning these simple labels. So let's get cracking. The first one here, you've probably seen before many times, because this is how we work out the area of a circle, and it's the radius. So it's from the centre to the edge of the circumference here, and we call that the radius. And of course it can be from the centre to any point on the circumference, and it's always called the radius. And I've just mentioned it, the circumference. The circumference is basically the perimeter of the circle. So the length all the way around the circle is called the circumference. The other one that you probably already know is this one here, which is the diameter. So this is a straight line going from one end to the other end of the circumference. So basically one point of the circumference to the other, but it goes through the centre, and that's crucial. It must go through the centre to be the diameter. And again, it can be any point, 2 points around the circle, but it must go through that centre. The one you might not know is this line here. So this is called the tangent. So a tangent is a straight line that just touches the circumference at one particular point. Okay, so imagine the circumference all around here. This line is just touching it, but it's a nice straight line, and we call that the tangent. Another one that you might not be aware of is this one here, the chord. So the chord is a straight line, again, just like the diameter, going from one point on the circumference to the other point. The difference here is that it doesn't need to go through the centre. Although this line here could also be called the chord, okay, because it does go from one point to the other. In the exam, I would say stay away from doing that. I would say that's the diameter and this is a chord, so 1 point to 1 point. But technically that is correct. This could also be classed as a chord. And the way I remember it anyway is if you imagine that this is the circle of a guitar and you've got all your different strings here, you know, to play music, you need to do chords. So that's how I remember it. Of course, you might have a different way, which is absolutely cool. So just the line there is called a chord. Now the area that's shaded above that, which is here, is called a segment. Okay, so if you have a chord, the area above that is called a segment. But also the area below that is also called a segment. So how we distinguish between the two is the larger one we call the major segment, and the smaller one we call the minor segment. Okay, so the bigger segment we call the major one, the smaller we call the minor. Exactly the same with this. If you have two radiuses, so from the centre, if you have a radius and another radius, and again the area in between those ones, which I've shaded here, is called a sector. And of course the area that isn't shaded in is also called a sector, and exactly the same as the segments. The larger one, in this case is this one, we call a major sector, and the smaller one we call a minor sector. Just think of your slices of pizza is the best way I remembered it, that one. And the final thing that you need to know is this one here called the arc. Now the arc is a length around the circumference. Okay, so it's just part of the circumference. So in this case I've just done it as part of the sector here. So I've got my radius, and it's just this part of the circumference here. We call that the arc. Of course, if that's the arc, we also have another one here. This is called the arc, and just like with our segments and our sectors, the larger one we call the major arc, and the smaller one we call the minor arc. And that's it. They're all the terms that you need to know regarding circles. So hopefully that helps, guys. Hopefully that gets you a few extra marks in the exam. Thanks for watching. Cheers.